Hello and welcome back to Ryujin Tech. Today we're going to be finishing up the Unreal Engine 4 tutorial for ALS V3, adding the rifle animation overlays. We're also going to be adding a mesh, adding scene components, and then finding out how to attach these to our character so that we can have the character holding and interacting with these objects. The assets are borrowed from ALS V4 and have been adopted for this project. You can find them in the zip file on the GitHub repository. Please download them and follow along. The first thing we need to do is import our asset. So I'm going to do that by creating a new folder in content, and I'm going to name it props. And then inside of the props folder, I'm going to add two more folders. One's going to be called meshes and the other one's going to be called materials. And then I'm going to enter the meshes and I'm going to import the rifle FBX file that's included in the zip file from the GitHub. So you can just import it. And then you will have the assets here with the materials. I'm going to click and drag the materials into the material folder. I'm going to move it here, and then I'm going to go into the materials and I'm going to make a copy of this asset. And I'm going to change the color. So I'm going to make it kind of like a dark gray. And the purpose of this is so we can see differences in our assets later when we go and start attaching objects onto our character. So with that, I'm now going to go back into the meshes and I'm going to create a simple blueprint class. And this is going to be an actor class. And I'm going to call this BP Weapon Master. This is just going to be a placeholder for our assault rifle. And now I'm going to create a child blueprint class. And this is going to be BP assault rifle. So inside of the blueprint master, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the default scene root here. I'm going to add another component. I'm going to add a skeletal mesh. So this skeletal mesh is going to be used to hold whatever skeletal mesh we want inside of our blueprint. The weapon master is going to be able to be inherited by any other type of children. And then inside of the assault rifle, I'm going to change this to the rifle asset. And then I'm going to change the texture to the black texture. The reason why is so we can have a black blueprint and then we have yellow on our default skeletal mesh. So we can see a difference in how these are being interacted and attached to our character in later steps. The next thing that we need to do is go into our animation blueprint so we can modify our skeleton. We have to add some virtual bones and some sockets in here so we have things to be able to attach our weapons to. So the first thing I'm going to do is select the left hand. I'm going to add a virtual bone and I'm going to search for the hand right. And so this is going to connect the left and the right hand via virtual bone. I will rename this and this is going to be LHS IK hand gun. And then on this virtual bone that I just made, I'm going to add another virtual bone. And this time I'm going to do hand R. And then this is going to be named LHS IK hand R. So now we have our left hand IK and our right hand IK references properly set here. And now we have to do the similar thing on the right hand. The difference is going to be, we're going to select and we're going to add a virtual bone, but the first bone is going to be hand R. We'll rename this one to RHS IK hand gun. I'll have my caps lock on. RHS IK hand gun. And then now I need to add another virtual bone, and this is going to be for hand L. and this is going to be named RHS underscore IK hand L. Okay, so now we have our virtual bones for being able to attach our weapons for holding, but we still need to be able to add some sockets here so we can place some weapons. So the first one I'm going to do is going to be adding a socket onto the Find 3. The socket I'm going to rename to Weapon Slot Back. And then on this weapon slot back, I'm going to right click and then add a preview asset, and I'm going to add the rifle skeletal mesh. And so what this allows me to be able to do now is kind of see where it is. And then now I have the ability to move this socket around so that way it can fit a little bit better on the character. Perfect. It can fit better on the character. And then now we have the ability to have this here. If you wanted to add a sidearm, for example, say your character is right-handed and you want to add a sidearm, you can come down to the right hip, pelvis, no. So, sorry, the right thigh, not hip. And then you can add another socket here. So I'm going to add a socket, and this one I'm going to name weapon slot hip R. And then I'm going to add a preview asset on here as well. I'll add the rifle. And so then, as you can see here, this one's a little bit weird. So I want to just kind of play around with this a little bit. I'm not obviously going to attach this right now with everything that I've got going on, but you can see how attaching this onto the hip would kind of work. And then now you have the ability to have that set up for your character. So now we have the virtual bones for the hand IK. We have a weapon slot for the back, and we have a weapon slot for the hip to be able to hold our weapons. Heading back into the ALS base character allows us to now add the components that we need so we can attach everything to our character. So I'm going to left click on mesh. I'm going to add a component. I'm going to add a scene component. The scene component for this, I'm going to name hold object root. And then this hold object root, I'm going to add another component. I'm going to add a skeletal mesh. We'll leave it as skeletal mesh, and then I'm going to add a static mesh, and I'm going to leave that named static mesh. We just added the sockets for the hip and the back, so we can add those as well. So we're going to add a scene root first. And so the one scene root is going to be called carry back weapon, and then I'm going to add a child actor, and I'm going to call this long gun. You put the longer gun on the back, I guess. And then I'm going to select the mesh again. I'm going to add another scene component. And then this one, I'm going to name carry hip weapon. And then I'm going to add another child actor onto the carry hip weapon. And then I'm going to call this sidearm. Okay. So now, since I have this, I have the ability to attach things to sockets. However, the issue that we have is we can't attach it to a socket because the default mesh is inherited from the base class. So in order to get around this, what we have to do is be able to set these values at begin play. So I am going to slide these out further. And then coming from the weapon type changed, I'm going to, let me pull the mesh out first. So from the mesh, I'm going to attach to component. And I want to select the one that's the scene component. So I'm going to do the scene component. So I'm going to put the mesh down as the parent, and then the target I'm going to set as the carry back weapon as the target. Okay, and so the socket name I'm going to have is, we had it set to weapon slot back, and then I'm going to change these rules to snap to target. And then we have the bodies welded, which is exactly what we want. Slide this down a little bit further. Okay, so now I need to copy this because I'm going to be attaching another component. This time, instead of the carry back weapon, I'm going to do the carry hip weapon. Then carry hip weapon will go into the target, connect everything up. And then there we go. Now we have our components being set to the proper sockets at begin play. So that way we have the ability to have everything where it needs to be. And just to make sure that everything is working, I'm going to do the BP assault rifle for both of my child actors here. Compile and save, and play. I've got one. So the reason why is because I still have this set on the weapon slot back. So I'm going to change it to weapon slot hip R. And that should fix the location of that weapon. There we go. And now I can run around and the weapons stay exactly where they're supposed to be attached to. Now we need to add a couple of functions, so that way we can handle events such as clearing the weapon from the hand, updating the weapon type, and being able to attach the weapon to the character's hand. So I'm going to add a new function. And this new function I'm going to call clear weapon from hand. This clear weapon from hand is going to be used to reset everything, so that way we have nothing attached or connected to anything anywhere. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the long gun object, and I'm going to get the child actor. And then from the child actor, I'm going to check if it's valid. And then if it's valid, I'm going to attach to a component. And I want the actor class target. And so then the target is going to be the child actor. And then for the parent, I'm going to grab the mesh, the character mesh. Okay, now I'm going to set everything so that way the snap is to target, and then the socket name here for the long gun is going to be the weapon slot back. Oh, I misspelled that. Put a S right in there. Awesome. Okay, so we have the weapon slot back. Next, I'm just going to copy and then paste this. So what I've got here is instead of doing the long gun, I'm going to do the same thing on the sidearm. Get the child actor, and then instead of the weapon slot back, I'm going to do the weapon slot hip R. So the reason I do this valid check is because if we don't have a blueprint attached, this is going to error out because there would be no child actor. And so what we need to do, if it's not valid, that means there's no blueprint for that part set up. So we can just skip attaching it to the component. And then we're going to do something similar on this side as well. So I'm going to come out of here. I'll grab the skeletal mesh. I'll do it this way instead. And then I'm going to set static mesh. And then I'm going to just leave it blank. And then from the not valid, I'm going to just come over and attach it also to the set static mesh. And so the purpose of this is so that way, if I don't have a child actor set in my sidearm, I won't error out hitting this because there's no child actor to target. Okay, next I'm going to grab out the skeletal mesh. And then from the skeletal mesh, I'm going to set skeletal mesh. I'm going to leave that blank as well. And then I'm going to grab another skeletal mesh. And then from here, I'm going to pull out set anim instance class. I'm also going to leave that blank as well. Okay, perfect. So this is going to allow us to reset everything for being clear. So we're going to put our long gun back onto the back slot. We're going to put our hip gun back onto the hip slot, and that's only if there is a blueprint child actor in there. And then we're going to clear out our static mesh so nothing is there, clear out our skeletal mesh so nothing is there, and then clear out the skeletal mesh animation class as well. So all of this will be zeroed out and cleared. The next function is going to be a little bit more complicated to make. And so it's going to be called AttachWeaponToHand. And so what we're going to do here is set a bunch of input parameters here. So the first input parameter we're going to set for new static mesh. And it's going to be a static mesh type. We're going to add a new skeletal mesh. And that's going to be a skeletal mesh type. We're also going to add a new animation class, and that's going to be an object, and then an object class reference. So go to object and then class reference right here, the purple one. And while we're at it, we're also going to have our BP child actor. And this is going to end up being a child actor type, a child actor component. We are going to have our left-handed Boolean, which I'm not going to be making use of in this, but if you want to modify it later, so that way you can have a left and right-handed position, go right ahead. But that's why it's here. We're going to add an offset and a rotator, or a rotation. So that way we can do an offset and rotate our asset. And then that's it. So I don't need that last one. Okay. So now we have our input components and everything set. So the first thing that I want to do is pull out of here, and I'm going to go through a list of sequences. The first sequence I'm going to do is just going to be simple, clear weapon from hand. Okay, easy enough. So the second thing that I want to do is I'm going to pull out the static mesh. I'm going to make sure it's valid. And then from here, I'm going to grab the static mesh again. Oh, I don't want static mesh. I want the new static mesh. My apologies. Okay, so then if that's the case, then what I want to do is set the static mesh on the actual hold object root static mesh. And then I'm going to set the new mesh option. There we go. Easy day. So I'm going to comment this and then set if using static mesh. So if we're passing in an empty object, null object, it's going to just be set to the default null and it's not going to break anything. Next, I want to grab the new skeletal mesh. And I'm going to check to make sure this is also valid. And then I'm going to connect this from pipe in number 2. If this is valid, then I want to grab the skeletal mesh. And then I'm going to set skeletal mesh. And then the skeletal mesh is going to be the new skeletal mesh. And then I want to do the reinitialize on the pose to make sure everything is properly set. And then the next thing I'm going to do is grab the new anim class. I'm going to grab out is valid class to make sure that we're not doing anything with anything that is invalid. And then I'm going to bring out a branch. And if our new animation class is valid, then I want to be able to set the animation class inside of our skeletal mesh for the hold object root. And then I'll grab the new anim class, and then I will set the value here. Okay, that's done. So this is being used, and this is going to, if using skeletal mesh and possible anim class. Okay. Now off of number 3, what we want to do is be able to do and manage our BP actor. So I'm going to grab our BP child actor. And so our BP child actor I'm going to do and is valid. We're doing the valid checks to make sure that we aren't throwing any errors in case we just have something that's null. Okay. So if it is valid, then I want to grab the get actor or get child actor. If it's valid, I want to use this child actor so I can attach to a component. And then I'm going to attach it to the mesh if we have a blueprint actor to be able to attach to. This is going to be snap to target, snap to target, snap to target, and then weld. The last thing that we want on here is we have to attach socket name. So I'm going to grab left-handed. So if you are going to do a left-handed, then we just need to figure out which bones we're going to attach everything to. And so with this, if false, we're going to attach to the VB, RHS, IK, hand, gun. And then if true, we're going to attach it to VB, LHS, IK, hand, gun. Okay, so if we are left-handed, we're going to attach to the virtual bone socket for the left hand. Otherwise, if we're not left-handed, we're right-handed, we're attaching it to the right-hand side hand IK bone. And then now from that, we can grab the blueprint child actor. And then what we want to do here is grab the root component. Then we want to set the relative location and rotation. And so this is going to be to the location input. Oh, it's offset. That's what it's called. Yeah, offset. And then we have get rotation. And then there we go. So this is going to be for set if using BP child actor. And then the last little bit that we have is we're going to be grabbing the hold object root. So we've cleared the item, we've set the static mesh, we've set the skeletal mesh objects. So all of these are being set inside of the hold object root. And then now if these are being set, we now need to attach the object root to the player hands. Right now, the blueprint is being set separately because that's not inside of the hold object root. And so what we need to do here is be able to pull out the attached component. And I want it to be on the scene component. Okay, we're going to snap everything to target. The parent is going to be the character mesh. And then the socket name, we can just copy this. There we go. We have everything welded. And then the next thing that we want to do is grab the hold object root. And we're going to set its relative location and rotation as well. Okay, now I can just copy and paste this. Fantastic. Okay, now we're done. Okay, so one little piece of housekeeping is I'm going to grab these other functions that we made and I'm going to drag them into the weapon systems category. So that way everything stays nice and updated there. So the other thing that I wanted to do was I told you about the different color in the weapons before. So that way we can see how things are being attached differently. So instead of adding a blueprint on our attached weapon, what I want to do is go into the skeletal asset and I'm going to add in the rifle. So now if I compile and save and attach the weapon, you'll see now we have a yellow weapon because we're actually attaching the rifle skeletal mesh instead of attaching the blueprint character that we had created before, or the blueprint actor that we'd created before. And so that allows us to be able to see and show that we have the different types of behavior being performed based off of the input and everything that we have. One last housekeeping for cleaning up. So on the set object root to hands, I had accidentally left the attach to component on keep relative. So just send that down to snap to target. And then on the animation blueprint, I was having issues where the left hand wasn't properly aligning with the magazine well. So where you have the cache, let me fix the spelling on here. Cache weapon overlay poses, I dropped the blend depth from 4 to 1, and I have much better outcome now on the animation. So the character's hand is now properly aligned. When you relax though, the hand doesn't necessarily align with the weapon. That can be fixed by doing some IK work and getting the hands and everything lined up to where exactly they need to be on the weapon. But for right now, this is close enough, good enough. So I'm going to wrap this up. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down in the comments section, and I will see you all in the next one. Thank you very much for your time.